Hey guys, it's Aiden. Today we're going to be talking about Darksiders 3, which is a fascinating game on many levels just based on its history. In case you're not familiar with the Darksiders series, it is centered around the four horsemen of the apocalypse, so naturally there were four games planned. While the first two games managed to release, plans for the third and fourth games were ultimately shut down after the demise of THQ. But with the revival of THQ via THQ Nordic, which I also made a video on in case you want to watch that, the Darksiders series has risen from the ashes with the announcement of Darksiders 3. But now that Darksiders 3 is out and the Darksiders series is essentially back, and now the question is, does this appeal to people who have never played a Darksiders game before, or is it simply only going to work for fans of this series? And that's kind of the question that I grapple with. Just for some background, Darksiders 3 focuses on Fury, and she is tasked with bringing down the 7 deadly sins. Now, Darksiders 3 kind of exists in this weird space that has essentially vanished from the gaming landscape. It's somewhere between the small indie games with minuscule budgets and the high 1,000-person teams, big budget AAA projects that dominate the video game industry. Just by looks and gameplay alone, it obviously has a bigger budget than whatever, say like a Journey or Guacamelee, but it also is nowhere near the budget of God of War, which is a series that Darksiders was often compared with. It is a weirdly nostalgic game for a lot of reasons, and one of them is the visuals. It does look like a last-gen game, and I don't really mean that in a bad way. In an era where games are either like aiming for photorealism or at least somewhere close to photorealism, it does have an art style that kind of harkens back to a different era of games. But where it kind of harkens back to a different era in a bad way, and kind of, there's a lot of reused assets when it comes to the backgrounds, the landscapes, and even things like the NPCs, and you know, it just shows that this game really didn't have that high of a budget, especially even compared to the other two. It feels like, in a way, a game from like 6 years ago, which, you know, in a way, like I said, made me feel nostalgic while playing Darksiders 3. Gameplay wise, Darksiders 3 is not trying to be anything more than a straightforward hack and slash video game, which is fine with me in an era where games are doing so many different things at once, where you have God of War pushing the envelope in terms of visuals and storytelling, Red Dead Redemption with its massive open world and sheer number of things to do, or games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which has an open world and is heavily tying into an RPG system. Darksiders 3 it isn't trying to be anything more than it wants to be, which, you know, it knows what it wants to be, and it is fine with being just that. The combat in this game feels great. It's fast and fluid, and there's this really, really awesome dodging system that just feels so satisfying. And the addition of the hollow system is a great way to change up gameplay and add variety to it as well. Fury can get access to 4 different hollow forms, each with its own different unique weapon in addition to Fury's whip, that offer you different styles of attack and let you accomplish different things in the overworld as well, which also gives it a Metroidvania aspect, because it is this kind of open world in a sense. And while there are combos you can use in the game, it's not as intricate as some other action games, so it does make it a little more accessible gameplay wise. It is a case where there are less enemies on screen as compared to the two games, but these enemies are tougher to take down. So in this game, you're not really concerned with racking up combos and getting as many hits in succession as you can, and that's fine in my eyes. Going off the enemies, I think the personifications of the 7 deadly sins is something that is Darksiders 3's biggest strength. They are so unique in how they look in terms of visuals and style and aesthetics, but they also perfectly represent the overarching idea of that sin, so you can easily tell which one you're facing. Sloth is a giant bug, like, can't get more literal than that. I will say that there are some changes to the Darksiders formula that kinda left me a little disappointed. The removal of chests is the biggest one. The chests gave it this feeling of a Zelda-esque adventure. It gave you something to find and look for, and while that still is there in a way, it just doesn't feel as satisfying as going off the beaten path and just stumbling upon this hidden treasure chest and reaping the rewards from that. Instead, here you can find humans to save, or some items that you can use in battle. I think I've ultimately reached the conclusion that while I think any Darksiders fan will find a lot to love in this game, for all the things that are changed, it is the same core Darksiders formula. I don't think I can recommend this game to newcomers. The story is kind of obtuse, and really, I don't know if you'd understand it if you haven't played the other two Darksiders games, which, to be fair, are available on current-gen systems. And there are just some technical issues that just can really dampen the excitement of a game. I encountered a lot of frame rate issues and just outright game freezes. There are numerous times where I'm just running and the game just pauses and loads for at least a minute or two. In a game like Darksiders 3, where it's all about flow and momentum and going from one area to another and like just going from one enemy to another, it really can just bring everything to a halt. I think this is the most technical issues I've encountered in a game in quite some time. And as I've pretty much mentioned throughout this whole thing, it is dated in many ways. While I felt nostalgic while playing the game in that it kind of harkens back to a bygone era, some may just see it as dated. When Darksiders was still alive and kicking, it was compared to the God of War series quite often, and probably will be compared nowadays. And while God of War in 2018 has essentially reinvented itself and become something new, the comparison may still be there. While God of War pushes the envelope in pretty much every way imaginable, Darksiders 3 isn't what it's setting out to do, but in a way that may be setting up for failure because people are expecting something different. Ultimately, Darksiders 3 is a weird game because some people will look at it as nostalgic and harkens back to an era of video games that kind of just disappeared. But on the other hand, some may see it as dated and not innovative enough in today's landscape where you have virtually every AAA game pushing the envelope in some way. As a fan of the Darksiders series, I felt right at home playing it. And that's probably because Gunfire Games, the developers, is essentially Visual Games rebranded. And you can tell that this is a studio that cares about this franchise and these characters. And that's reflected. It's Darksiders. There's not much more to say than that. There is hack and slash combat, puzzles that aren't extremely challenging but will make you think, and an intriguing lore. The Darksiders lore is still really fascinating. Darksiders 3 is a reintroduction to a beloved franchise that obviously the people making it care about and love. In an era where many games are trying new things and pulling from all different corners of the world, Darksiders 3 is just looking to be nothing more than what it started out as. So that's it, and I will see you next time. Bye.